Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is a special video. It has the subject is about a death experience that I had July the 8th, 1988. I have several other versions or renditions of this video, this story, online in different places, and it has been used in near-death experience NDE workshops, study groups, um, all kinds of spiritual development things, hypnosis groups, all kinds of things. Um, so I'm going to tell you the story and also kind of give you a multi-dimensional experience of this story and tell you about this art piece. This piece is called The Turn, and this is a piece that I've been working on now for a couple of years. My work um, is called Holy Chic Iconic Installation Art. Um, I do custom work for people with past life experiences, spiritual journeys, help people with going through trauma, telling their stories, end of life experiences, celebration of life experiences, dreams that they've had, all kinds of different things. And so we use art as a tool, not really a therapy, but it shadows a therapy. And it tells a story. Each piece on the project is a code or a significant indication of something about the story. So here we go. We're going to talk about my story in July 8th, 1988. And I'm going to start the story of the death experience on the eve of July the 4th. In 1988, myself and a couple of girlfriends were up in Canada. We had gone on a bike tour just by ourselves. And that day, I believe we had been to Jasper Lake on the bikes. I was on light duty that day and drove the car ahead and picked up a couple of friends when they got to that destination. Then we went on a cruise around Lake Jasper. That evening, we went back down to Lake Louise, found a restaurant that was still open. My flight to go back to Kansas was, I think I had to be at the airport around 4 a.m., something like that. And I was still kind of hungry from all the activities of the day. So we went to a little restaurant to just have a snack, just something to carry us over because, I could get something in the airport or take it on the plane back in those days. Um, so I just got some egg rolls, nothing fancy, just spring rolls. And they came, our restaurant was kind of dark, and I started eating them. And, we were eating by candlelight at the best and telling our stories and our adventures and having our goodbyes. And I noticed that there were some little crumbs on my plate. And I kind of had to hold them up and put the candle over so that I could see it a little bit better. And realized it was little bitty baby shrimps. And I'm deathly anaphylactic, allergic to shrimp. So shellfish is not my thing, especially prawns, that whole krill, shrimp family. Just, they're not my friend. Um, so I ran to the bathroom to force myself to throw up. And I thought I got most of it out. Um, It's a horrible thing when you have anaphylactic shock. You have to learn all kinds of things to take care of yourself and advocate for yourself. And here we were in Canada. I didn't know a doctor. And, I had to get it out of my system. I had to get it out of my system. And we, I did as much as I could. Went back to the table, said our goodbyes. I went directly to my room, packed. I went ahead and immediately called for the taxi to take me to the airport so that I could at least make some progress on my destination um, as quickly as I could, because the cities where we were flying, where I was flying out of, was a bigger city than where we were. So I thought that was the best course of action, trying to get to a safe place, trying to get to where if I had a medical emergency, I could handle it and, do the best for myself I could. So I made it on the plane, and uh, by then it was the 4th of July, and I was flying over. I flew into Wichita, and I could see all the fireworks and all the explosions in the air going off, which was quite a wonderful memory for me. And I had been celebrating on that trip my success as a holistic practitioner. Back then, we called them alternative wellness or alternative medicine. And I had just a week before this happened, had finished up the summer alcohol studies program at Rutgers and was one of the contributing professors there. And my forte up to that point, I was well known for doing holistic expos around the country, speaking um, in conferences and symposiums on alternative wellness for people in recovery, people who no longer choose to use alcohol or drugs as a means of offloading their emotions and, um, you know, shutting down. So my study, my subject had been one, high risk management for children. I've helped develop quite a few programs for that. And then alternative wellness for the adult children. So, my age, if my dad had been an alcoholic or a drug addict, doesn't matter the age group. It matters that you were the child of someone who had been raised with an addictive pattern, active addictive pattern, and you have somewhat inherited behaviors or conditioning that really wasn't working for you back then. So, my thing, my skill set, my what I brought to the table was tools to help that class of that segment of our society how to cope with emotional things that were overwhelming, instead of choosing alcohol, instead of choosing pot, instead of choosing other narcotics. I've always had to be a very brave person in the face of trauma and show up completely sober, straight, alert, and aware. Not that I want the rest of the world to be like me, because that in and of itself takes a certain, nerves of steel to do, but we can move toward that, and we can all improve even better. Today, I was listening to some frequency music about clearing certain patterns in our system. And I would say that I do that frequently, but I would say that I began to learn about frequencies on July the 8th of 1988. And so that's how long I've been working and helping people on a different level. Up to that point, I was strictly coming from a cultural standpoint of need and trying to be a solution in communities. I ran a treatment program for adult children of alcoholics. Um, I ran and supported high risk programs for smaller children. And, all of it very successfully. We felt we would make progress in helping people to find other ways like breathing, feeling the feelings. Let the feelings pass through your heart and send it out with compassion or love. There were just little bitty simple techniques. We got into working with frequencies back then, and yoga was a big one for helping us just to breathe through and release those stuck emotions in our body and do it in a non toxic, meaning non neurotoxic way so that it could really be cleared, you know. And so that had been my work up to that July 4th, eating the shrimp on my way out experience. When I got home at the end of July 4th, after I saw the fireworks and everything, and I felt like I had been celebrated by the universe watching that, because I had really, teaching at Rutgers, I remember walking off the campus and thinking, I've done it all now. There isn't anything greater I could do. And just this little girl from Kansas who, you know, chose to do it the right way and to not shy away with chemicals and neurotoxins and show up with courage and determination to take all of the emotions, to take all of the shame, all of the guilt, all of the fear, and process it through my body and let it go back to the universe or to the earth for cleansing, for clearing. So that in essence was what I was doing up to that point. Um, Within a couple of days of arriving home, I started having the whole gut, razor blade in my gut experience. Couldn't breathe. Definitely getting into some challenges. And I was able to get one of my students back then to drive me to a clinic in Texas that some of my past students um, were in practice. They were medical doctors in a clinic there, and they knew me, they knew my work, they knew who and what I was about. They had been with me when some amazing information was channeled to me. They've been supportive of my soul and of my journey here on earth. And they were just the most supportive, um, good choices that I could make at that moment. So we got to the clinic and I laid down on the exam table, and Dr. Valerie had come, I'm laying out, and Dr. Valerie had come to my head and she had just placed her hands over my heart, just below my clavicle. So now I know that is the high heart. So my divine heart, our highest good from our heart. And I looked up at her, and she was trying to get me to tell her how that felt. And I just looked at her, and the only thing I could think of was, I'm dissipating. And the next thing I knew, I was right next to the light in the clinic room. And I'm watching them, giving CPR to this woman on this table. And I thought, what are they doing to that poor woman? You know, oh my gosh. And I mean, I finally became aware that that was me. I was out of my body. I had left, and I was watching them give me CPR. They were trying to bring me back. And I realized in that moment that I must be dead. I know that sounds like a giggle, and it kind of was. But at the same time, my instant thought was, well, I need a mission. There was no rest for me. So at that very moment, when I looked back at the light that was in the clinic room, and I thought, well, I need a mission. And the greatest question I'd always wanted to know was, what is God? What is God? What is God to me in my high heart? What is God to me? Have you ever asked yourself that? I was dying to know that. I had died to know that. So at that moment, when I saw that light in the room, I thought, if that's God, because you're always told as a child growing up that God is light. And I thought, if that's God, I'm really disappointed. No, 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 no. But I turned, and that's where this picture starts, the turn. And so when I turned, I saw the absolute most incredible white light you can even begin to imagine. It wasn't white, it was whiter than white. It was opalescent. It was opaque. It was, and I started staring into the whiteness, and I saw a little squiggle, just a little squiggle. And I thought, it's moving, and it kept coming closer and closer to me. And eventually, as it came closer and closer to me and before me, I realized that it was my friend Jesus. And I don't say this from a Christian standpoint of Jesus is my Savior. I say this from a standpoint of Jesus was my friend. I knew him from before. And he took my hand and he led me on over to the other side. And we found a place that was kind of like a little grassy knoll, that we could sit, like a little picnic area. And it was just so pleasant and so beautiful. And he said, we're going to learn about love. And we're going to learn about love is the medicine. It is a vibration. It is a frequency. 432, if you're looking up the frequency Hertz music on YouTube, or you're buying it in a CD. And if you've seen David Hawking's chart on higher frequencies, it starts down at 20, shame, guilt, fear, and goes on up. When you come up to about that 432, you're starting to feel love. You're starting to feel healed. You're starting to feel complete and satisfied. So everything above that is a bonus. But so we're sitting there and we're learning about love. We're learning about the frequency of love. We're learning about the color of love, the taste of love, the smell of love. For me, it was an amber. And yeah, I can just go there in a moment just with that. It unlocks those memories in my brain still. So we sat there for what seemed to me to be a couple of days learning about love and how we can infuse and offer those vibrations to people in need, to people who have diseasements and all kinds of things, whether they were in distress from relationships or medical emergencies or um, just different opportunities that life presents us to be, you know, you don't sometimes take the time to do yoga and process those feelings. Maybe you can't, but you can do the frequencies. You can do, um, I think it was Nikola Tesla that said, in terms of healing, think of frequencies as the medicine. And this is what I was taught in 1988 by the master healer himself, Jesus. And then I became aware of where and how he learned and the consciousness that was activated in him to be able to perform miracles, to be able to transcend disease and death and to help people through those things. Anyway, so love, it's the medicine. And I thought, well, at one point, um, he had me look back into that hospital room or the clinic room where I had been laying, and they had given up resuscitating me. And Dr. Valerie had collapsed herself over my body, and she was laying like right on top of the body. And I thought, wow, they gave up on me. Okay, okay. But I still felt okay. And Jesus said, she loves you. And look at that body and feel that body. Feel the energy in that picture that I was seeing. And as I looked at it, my mind would only do so much with it. And it looked to me like she had given up on me, but she didn't love me. She respected me, but I didn't feel that love. And Jesus kept saying, tune in deeper, go deeper, go to the place where you are dying to feel loved. And when I did, it locked in that awareness in my body. It activated all of that DNA. And, kind of jumping ahead, if it's not love, I don't want to be there. Why would I have a relationship with somebody that doesn't love me? After that, I mean, come on. Anyway, um, after those kinds of activations and journeys that I went through with Jesus, we went on, I call it like a universe flight. I think we were moving through timelines, and my DNA was being activated. Different DNA strands were coming on board. And it just felt like we were flying in the galaxy, just a glorious experience of freedom and sovereignty and peace and oh, bliss, 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 bliss. Anyway, after that, he says we have to go to the temples of Asclepius. I didn't know that name in 1988. I mean, I'd studied a little Greek mythology, Apollo and um, Zeus and some of the big ones, Neptune and Poseidon, and that's about all I knew. I didn't really know any of them. And so we entered the temple of Asclepius. Asclepius was one of the purest wounded healer frequencies that's ever walked Earth. He um, had, kind of a hole in himself from something that he never had, the love of his mother. And he was raised in the temples of Chiron. Chiron represents in our solar system the wounded healer. And so Asclepius is known as a wounded healer. He is, in Hippocrates' medicine, they say, physician, heal thyself, which means wounded healing. And the, the only way we're going to do that is go within. Instead of picking up the narcotics, smoking the pot, the cigarettes, the sugar, the processed food, the alcohol, it's go within. What is this about? What is this telling me? What am I trying to not feel? Those things. Because everything starts with that discording energy. The the frequency is not there. It's off. And it has no place to go except through you. And when you feel that feeling and release it back to the universe, release it back to the earth, ask your spiritual guides to come with you and help you to do that. I think there's many angels in heaven that are bored out of their mind because nobody asks them for help anymore. So anyway, there is that little side joke. But with that being said, um, we went through this temple, and you can do your own research on Greek mythology, Asclepius, wounded healer, Chiron. You're going to get a lot of information. But it is basically the absence of something, love. Okay. In Western medicine, we detox the liver first. In Eastern medicine, we strengthen the spleen. We strengthen the immune system. And our immune system, which is the essence of my medicine, so to speak, of my tools, of my gifts, my healing spiritual gifts, is finding ways to activate your immune system, your love system. Because when you feel that kind of love, and it's not just love with your partner or with your children, or in my case, my little Zeus, my little service dog. It's divine love. When the Creator has downloaded that creative blessing in you, that is the love. That is the gift of His love, the creation. There is nothing in my world bigger than creative energy. It means I have become like my father, like my mother, creative, creatrix, some people would say, since I'm feminine. So after we did the grassy knoll, we went to the temples. I understood a little bit more about what Asclepius was. I still didn't believe it. And then further on down the road, jumping ahead a little bit for you, I did go back and research information and was just blown away how much accuracy I was given. Information, techniques, frequency, schematics for healing tools, phenomenal, phenomenal what I was given. Anyway, I went through different rooms in this temple. Each room is called an abaton, and it's like a little clinic room. or a little hospital triage room. It's a little space that is set aside for one patient, one client who comes there, who's spiritually called to go there to understand the basis of their disease, which is usually emotional or spiritual disruption. And so when they, through their dreams, were interpreted through hypnosis or a hypnotic kind of tincture that was given them. I think of it now that maybe it was like medicinal mushrooms or um, peyote or some of the herb medicines that we have. I don't know. I don't know. That's not my arena, and I stay away from that because I wanted to stay pure to my original calling of doing everything natural. I want God to download or activate those codes in me to be able to do it without an outside influence, meaning an herb, meaning a pill, okay, or a surgery. I've always stayed pure in my healing methods. So each room I got to visit and go through and wrote a lot of notes on and what happened in each room. Sometimes I would look into a room and see somebody rubbing somebody's feet, or I would see them working with crystals and gemstones, or I would see them working with magnetics, or I would see them working with big scanners. I would see them working with different coils and instruments. And I'm not going to give too much away, but there's a lot. There's a lot. And it's all about implying a different frequency to activate our own natural ability to heal ourselves. It's nothing else. Nobody else gives it to us. Nobody else can give it to us. So each room that I went into on that first floor was something different going on. I think of that floor as the diagnostic floor. I think of that floor as the attunement floor. I think of that floor as the original assessment. I saw some screens that would show us if this was really heavy and laden, then something else was depleted. And so, in doing that, I learned a lot about, in my world, I would call it diagnostics, but it didn't have anything to do with diagnosis. It just was a symbol that showed us where the energy needed to go. And it wasn't surgery, it wasn't any pills or, things that were outside the person's body. The answer was within each individual client. So, why in America do we have insurance or the medical system we have? Because people are missing this information, because people are kept in the dark, because people are kept ignorant, because other people want to make money off of your weakness, your ineptness, your uneducated abilities and capabilities of yourself, what you're capable of. Okay, because when I went through this whole thing, this whole healing temple, I was empowered to know that I could do this myself. I was empowered to know that there were always natural courses of action that I could take. Me. Sometimes it's a little hard because I don't see all the symptoms myself. I have to have somebody look at me and mirror it back to me. tell me, oh, yeah, I see that rash or something, silly. But each floor that I went through in this pyramid, there were different attention or different focuses for different parts of the healing. The last couple of floors were about integrating what was learned and allowing the body's DNA to be repaired and come online. Now, when I got to the very top, I call it the capstone, um, the head office, so to speak, there were ascended masters, there were angels, there were um, I don't know what you call it, guardians. Um, I went through this council and they asked me, what do you think about this? What do you think about your experience? I was in tears for much of my journey there because I was just shocked. And I was angry too that people on earth didn't know this. So, and that I didn't know this. And I was raised pretty privileged, and I went to medical school and then I went to other schools to learn how to heal naturally. Massage school, I've owned 6 massage schools, I've owned a holistic college. I mean, all of these things that I have done, all the healing opportunities that I have been exposed to, and I still didn't understand all of this about frequencies. And raising our frequencies naturally is in our power, and we do it every day by what we put in our mouth and by making sure that anything neurotoxic or toxic comes out of our bodies. I didn't get that. I didn't get any of that information in college. I didn't get any of that information growing up. And my grandmother was a healer. My great grandmother was a medicine woman. I didn't get any of that. And I thought I paid attention. Anyway, when I stood before that big council, let's just call them ascended masters, but they were a collection, please know that. And Jesus reappeared to be with me through many of the stages of this. I think the reason for him to be so close to me is because I trusted him. And I realized that trust is the number one thing we need to love. And he, because of that trust, was able to get through to me. I had grown up from a very, very dysfunctional family. We had pedophiles and narcissists and alcoholics and a mother who was addicted to overeating and abuse. And, I was orphaned at a month old, and I was considered lucky that I escaped that stuff. Um, but there were other things later on in my childhood that um, were quite shocking. And I think those things set me up for becoming a more advanced healer. And I think those things were downloaded into my body when I died when I was 4 years old from sexual abuse. My father had found me, just to give you a little backstory. My father had found me. I had been abused. I was bleeding out on the ground. My perspective, my only memory of it is being above that child's body and seeing that pool of blood they were laying in. And the next thing I remembered was being embraced by the angels, by the ascended masters. I don't remember anything else until my body was taken to the hospital. My father found me and took me to the hospital. And I don't know how long I was there before I came back into my body. and woke up, so to speak, or reawakened. But I had been with the angels. I had been with the ascended masters. I believe that at that point, a new DNA and a new purpose came online for me, or came awake for me. I don't believe that the mission or the purpose that I came in with as a child who was orphaned and then molested to death was the person that I am today. I believe that the ascended masters and the angels kept me safe until I could have some reprogramming, some healing, some love back into my consciousness, back into my soul. And then I came awake a little after 4 years old. And how I believe this to be true is because by the time I was 5 and 6 years old, I was being stood up in churches that believed in the power of laying on of hands and spiritual healing. And I was being the child who laid hands on people that were being healed. This was a big secret in my family. Nobody wanted anybody to know about it. And then years later, I found out that my parents were benefiting from that money that they were getting. I wasn't. I didn't have a new bike. I didn't have anything. So, with that being said, people were benefiting from my spiritual gifts that I didn't know about. And that's an important DNA imprint because people for most of my life have been in my pockets to make a buck off of me. A few of them have showed up as students with integrity to learn and have paid me for my energy. So there's been an energy exchange. There are a lot of toxic people that I have experienced and learned from what not to do. And so by that, I give those experiences to God and realize that that was the course or the lessons, the spiritual lessons, the universal laws of energy exchanging that I had to go through to claim my own sovereignty that I now have. So, with that being said, after, let's go back to the temple. I'm sorry I'm jumping around on you. Um, I'm going to interject one more thing. I have taken a lot of psychology tests over the years because, you know, people think you're nuts and you're schizophrenic and you're this and you're that. No, I have a very, very high IQ, high comprehension, and one of the things my brain does not do is sequence correctly, like everybody else claims to. I do, however, make the perfect filmmaker. And we're going to get to that in a minute. A filmmaker has a snapshot of a scene here and another scene here, and they're not in sequence. Sometimes they jump back and forth. You ever watch those movies where you're in one timeline and then you all of a sudden you're in the future and then you go back to the past and then now you're in the future again, or sometimes you're in the present day? That's how my brain is. So bear with me here. You're going to have to put all the pieces together. And if you're somebody who thinks linear, and you sequence well, you're going to probably want to replay this video a couple of times so you can download all of that information yourself. All right, we're going back to when we're in the top level, the capstone, the headquarters, the office of the Asclepius temples. And I'm standing before the Ascended Masters. They asked me what I thought, and I was in tears. I loved it. I really wanted them to put something like that, what I had witnessed, what I had seen, on earth. I believed that people and humans deserved that. They deserved the truth that inside of each one of us was a wounded healer, was a power was a strength from divine intelligence, God, from love that created us, and that we are creating from. We have become the God juice. We're just in these little light bulbs, you know. It's why I always look nice, because I show respect to the God that created me. So I dress my light bulb well, some say. When they agreed with me that there should be something like that on Earth, and I thought, well, okay, I'm making headway here with the Ascended Masters. Not bad for a little Kansas girl, right? Well, my idea of that was that they would all just assign me somebody and I could kick a little booty from heaven, right? I'd just be somebody else's guardian angel. I'd be your guardian angel. If you want to put a spiritual or a healing center together and make it about natural energies and frequencies and techniques that you could come about and teach people how to take care of themselves, self-love, self-care, self-respect. If you could boost that into people and you wanted to create a healing center that did that with natural means, then I would be your guardian angel and kick your booty. Okay? That's what I wanted. That was the job I wanted. That's all I wanted. And I wanted to do it from heaven's side. Well, the Ascended Masters had other things in mind. And they told me I had to come back and I had to create it. And I had to create a template for it. And I had to create programs for other people to do it, duplicate what I was doing, so that it would spread all over the world, all over the earth, because this energy is needed, and it is needed now more than ever. I mean, we just went through lockdowns because of the flu. So, with that being said, I finally agreed that I would do it. I had absolutely no idea how I was going to do it or what was going to happen. At that point, I was married to a man who was a cattle buyer. And at the end of my coming back and shifting back into my body that was on earth in that clinic room, at the end of doing that, there was a phase in there that I was allowed to see into the future a little ways. And I was shown very clearly that I would not continue to be with my children's father. And I was shown some other things, which I'm going to keep to myself. But everything I was shown in that little phase before I shifted back in has happened exactly as I seen it. Exactly. So, as I moved back into my body in that clinic room with a new mission, and if you want to watch my video called In the Beginning, then that one helps to explain the mission that I've been on since 1988. And I think there's been a few upgrades in timelines, especially around 2004, 2006 area. Those things got upgraded, and or that energy got really upgraded strongly. I think I went through a big learning curve, And that was when I really started downloading the technology for the healing centers. In 2007 and 8 is when we opened the first holistic college that was state licensed in Denver, Colorado. So I did what I was sent back to do. I ran a holistic medical spa in Seattle, Washington, and then we had a mini spa that I trained my staff how to handle and what to do and what frequencies to give out. And that was in Macy's, the old Macy's in Westlake Center. So we were very successful. We were very big. And at the same time, in that mix of from 88 to 204, I ran 6 massage schools. So downloading the energy and the frequencies and bringing it into the human body, helping the DNA to shift, helping to clear away old conditioning, that's all done with energy. That's all done with frequencies. That's all done with sound and light and color and different minerals and different, I want to say lasers, but that's not exactly the word. Um, anyway, I've been doing it. I've been doing it. And I was hired, I was asked to be hired about 2.5 years ago, I believe, during the lockdowns, to be the program director of education for a woman who is bringing online um, and opening several healing centers in the United States. And she's very pure in her diet. She's very pure in her um, belief systems toward God and her purpose toward humanity, uplifting it, bringing in love and light and helping people who are suffering. She's very pure. A friend of mine introduced me to her, and I felt in my soul um, the Holy Spirit confirming that I should help her. So I have been writing books and developing programs on paper that are the accumulation of almost 65 years of my life. I'm almost 70. To help her put these programs and these tools and meeting the doctors that she's brought on board into a program that is systematic for the ability to teach frequencies and healing and energy work to um, the masses. She's bringing on a lot of doctors. She's bringing on um, other people who have business experience. I don't know how that's going to work because my experience with people with business experience has not been good. You know, they have followed that greedy, cabal, dark money trail, and I'm soured on it, but that's me. You may not be soured on it. Um, I just don't want anybody else in my pockets anymore. So somebody wants to hire me or pay me for my information, help them to develop their own holistic medical spas. I have a reputation of being called the spa whisperer, and helping them in multiple stages of development and advanced training. You must already have your licensing in order. I can do some consulting if you need, your state and local stuff and that kind of thing. I can step you through what I've done, and you can have to check with your own local authorities. But Each state's going to be different. But if you have estheticians, massage therapists on staff, people who are doing Reiki energy healing work, a lot of professionals who are already licensed, medical doctors, chiropractors, acupuncturists. These are people that I've trained before, and those techniques are very organized, and they're very effective. So, with that being said, it's all about the love. And if you've never had the opportunity to see my paintings up close, what you're probably missing from this video is that all of this right here, I don't know if you could even hear that, is glitter. Glitter in my paintings is symbolic of the Holy Spirit. Crystals are symbolic of energy being lasered out, being directed out. So here's my little Jesus sending out energies. Then every one of my paintings has fortune cookies and keys in it, as some of you can see my big key. This one says, with love, all of your sorrows will vanish. I forgot what the fortune cookie said, sorry. This one says that this is a time for love and affection. So let's download that light into every bit of our being. Just bring it in through your crown chakra, bringing it up through the earth, radiate it out of your high heart. And keep doing it with every disturbing emotion that you have had, all of that shame, all of that guilt. Allow those heaven and earth energies to come in, meet in your heart, feel those feelings, and allow that energy to be transmuted. It's a place to start. If you need our assistance, just give us a call. Mwah! All my love. All my